Okay, here we are. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Fiona. Hello.
I'm so excited for today. It's our first ever Reading by Candlelight author interview, and it is made even more special because the first person I'm interviewing is none other than my very talented friend and debut author, Joe Dixon. Welcome, Joe, to Reading by Candlelight.
Thank you for having me, Fiona. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your number one, your first.
I know, it's very exciting.
We're gonna have fun. We'll learn through the process.
Yes, because disclaimer: this is my first ever interview with an author, and so please give any kind of suggestions for next time. I'll take everything on board. Now, just a little housekeeping first before we start. And I'd like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. I'd also like to offer my appreciation of Aboriginal voices and stories handed down for generations. Because Reading by Candlelight is all about finding new voices, finding new stories, and reading. And the next is to assure everyone that is watching that this is a spoiler-free interview.
Okay.
Now, Joe, I have read your fabulous book, The House of Now and Then. And so I know. And look, I have two.
Oh my God, you got two.
Because you signed one and the other one was my reading copy.
Thank you.
And it's a beautiful cover. You must have been so happy with it.
Look, you get no input basically in your cover, but when I saw it, I thought, well, I was taken aback to start with because it was nothing like I expected. And I thought, oh my God, it's great. It glows.
Yes, it does. And it really, on the shelves, when you go into a book, it looks fabulous.
Yeah, very happy. I was very, very fortunate with that one.
Now, of course, I've read it, and I just want to congratulate you on such an excellent debut. It was such a twisty, well-written thriller, and you know how much I love a dual timeline, and you gave us two compelling connected stories with some brilliant twists. I was very impressed.
Thank you.
It was such a page-turning read for me too, and I love that. That's that for me is like, always 5 stars. Now, I have read a lot of 5-star reviews of your book, which was very exciting for you.
It's so much more than I ever anticipated or expected. I'm one of these people who I'm optimistic by nature, but I'm also somewhat realistic. So I try to temper my expectations and set them somewhere safe. So to get the feedback I've been getting, to get the sales, and the book went to reprint already. It's just mind blowing. And sometimes when I get the reviews, I'm a bit nervous opening them in case they're not glowing. But practically everything that's come through has been extremely positive, and I've been getting emails directly from people say how much they enjoyed it. I had a lovely lady say it was one of the first books she held off reading the last few chapters because she wanted to draw it out. And she said she hadn't done that since Wilbur Smith.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, some lovely feedback, which is it makes you buzz, especially when you're a debut author, and putting a book out there in the world is exciting, like absolutely thrilling, and totally terrifying because you just don't know what's coming, and you don't know. You prepare for the worst. Well, I did. So to have this sort of lovely response, it's wonderful. It gives me goosebumps. I get so excited.
I'm so excited for you because reading those reviews, they've all just said exactly the same thing. It's just been wonderful. Now, for those that are watching that haven't purchased the book yet, and why not, can you please give us an elevator pitch?
Okay, so the elevator pitch is that Olivia is a very lonely woman who's run away from a big mistake she made in Sydney, in the city. She's been absolutely viciously attacked online and in public as well. So she's run away to Tasmania, which of course is the perfect place to hide out. She's in a remote house down there. She receives a letter from the friend that she put in jail so she's a bit scared about this woman coming for revenge. So when a bloke turns up at her door, an unknown man, she's scared. But he turns out to be someone who's travelled from England looking on behalf of his father, looking for a woman who stayed in the house 30 years earlier, a woman called Pippa. Olivia gets over her fear. The two of them set off to solve this unsolved mystery. So there's that going on. The second timeline is 1986, and we actually see the events of that summer. We see the story of Leo, who's a local boy, Pippa and Jeremy, who are best friends, who are down from Queensland, and what happened that summer and who disappeared and why. There's a lot of revelations, a lot of truths come out, and some dastardly deeds happen.
And I loved both the timelines. And I think that I love the 80s timeline because I was in my early 20s in the 80s. And so I could really relate to Pippa, and she's my favorite character, by the way. Love her. And I think that the storyline in the future about what's happened to Olivia through social media is really pertinent to today. I think that that's, you know, it's almost like you think that could have happened to anybody. And so, and it gave you, I mean, the two storylines gave you two very evil characters to write as well. So much fun. Now, what is it exactly that made this the story you wanted to tell?
That's actually a really hard question to answer. When I did a master's in writing way back in 2014, 2015. And as part of that, I wrote 30,000, sorry, the cat's having a
Mine will probably be jumping up in a minute too.
Bit of a scrap down there. When I was doing my master's, I had to do 30,000 words for a novel, and I started the story of these young people leaving Queensland to go and house sit in Tasmania, and things go wrong. So I started with that kernel, and then I came back home from where I'd been living in Bangkok, and I was in Tasmania, and another story started to grip me about how people run away to Tasmania, how it's a place to hide out, how you can be very isolated. You can cut yourself off quite easily down here. There's lots of places to live that are quite remote. And I wanted to play with that situation. So I didn't even have particularly characters in mind. I wanted to play with that scenario of someone escaping. So I had the students in my head on one side, and on the other side, I had this idea of a woman escaping and hiding out. I love both those things. And then somehow over a period of time, the stories became interwoven. And I can remember moments where I'd have the stories running in my head, and I'd weave them together and go, oh, so that connects with that, or that bit connects with that bit. So I can't remember. That's probably the origin story of it. But it evolved over such a period of time that how it all came together is a bit of a blur. I really wish I'd kept more notes. I really do. So to aspiring writers out there, keep your notes, because one day Fiona or someone else is going to ask you how it came together, and you'll be amazed at what you don't remember.
I love that. And I love that, you know, that it just evolved and that you had two stories and then you suddenly realized that you could connect them in that way. And isn't it amazing when you're writing and then all of a sudden something works and you go, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. Trying to explain that to people is like they look at you like you're a crazy person unless they write themselves, because just that way that, you know, your subconscious is working, and then all of a sudden it all comes together and you think, oh, aren't I clever?
And you think, I didn't know that. There's a massive, no spoilers, but there's a massive twist towards the last quarter of the book. And all the way through drafting this book, I didn't know this was going to happen. And when it came to me fully formed the scene. And I was just like, oh my God, how, where, who, yes. You know.
I bet you I can guess which bit you're talking about. Yes, it's very clever.
Yeah. I know I wrote it, but I don't know where it came from. It was just a little speck of something that landed in my brain.
That's wonderful. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the research you had to do for the novel? So I want to know if you learn how to sail.
No, I didn't. Now, research. Well, probably the greatest research was living down here and getting really, I mean, I love Tasmania. I just love it. I've never felt more at home anywhere. And I wanted to write a book set here because there's such an ambience down here. There's beauty, but there's also threat. So my research was just living here. There are other scenes in the 1986 timeline. I'm not giving anything away to say that they go into Hobart on New Year's Eve. I've been in Hobart on New Year's Eve on a Sydney Hobart yacht. And I remember all that scene vividly, well, up to a certain point. And so that added to the book. So that was definitely my experience that came out. Things like the Custom House Hotel being a favourite haunt of the sailors, and there being a tally on the board of jugs of rum and coke consumed. So I remember all that. They ran this tally.
That's true. Wow.
Which crew drank the most jugs of rum and coke. So there's those things that came from my own experience. But not, I tell you what, the research I did, oh no, I'll give something away if I tell you. No, I can't.
Oh, that's okay. We said we were spoiler free, and it's always difficult, isn't it, to talk about things and not give things away. Now, I know how long this book took you to write, Jo. Could you quickly share what your journey to publication was? So just that, that moment when you went, oh, okay, this is going forward.
Okay, so the journey to publication was long. I started writing the book, as I said, in 2015. I finished a really good, tidy draft in 2017, started pitching it. Now, I think I must pitch quite well because I got requested quite often by editors and got rejected beautifully over and over. So over the following years, I had a manuscript assessment done on it. I reworked it, I improved it, I edited it, I put it away, and I started writing something else because I thought, well, nothing's going to come of that. And then I'd pull it out again, do a bit more work on it, put it away. So it was pitched, requested, rejected solidly in between edits and what have you. And then in 2021, I had a slot with the Australian Society of Authors literary speed dating, which is a pitch festival type thing where you get 3 minutes on Zoom like this to pitch your book to an agent or an editor. And I thought to myself, what's the point? I've put down to pitch The House of Now and Then, but it's been rejected so many times. I haven't even rewritten it since the last time it was rejected. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting their time. And I thought, and the day came closer, and I thought, nope, what have I got to lose? So I sat down, did my 3-minute pitch to Nicola at Harlequin HarperCollins. And she said, yes, please send me the first 3 chapters, which I did. A day later, she said, I love it, send me the whole thing, which I did. A day later, she said, what else have you got? And I said, well, actually, I've got the second manuscript. She said, send it. So I did. The next week, she came back to me and said, I love that too. I'm going to take you to acquisitions, which is the meeting they have with the sales department and the editors and the hierarchy of the publishing house, and they make a decision. And she said, I'll take it into acquisitions. Send me a headshot, send me a blurb about you, because I've got to pitch you to the team. She said, I'll give you a call as soon as I know anything. So the day of the acquisition meeting, which was 3 weeks after my pitch, I knew that they were in acquisition, so I got this phone call. She stepped out of the meeting to say, yes, we would like to offer you a 2-book contract. And the rest, as I say, is history. So yeah, long time coming, and then very quick over the line. So
amazing. It must have been so exciting. How exciting was it to get that contract?
It was astonishing. It was when you've waited for something for so long, you have both hope and belief in yourself, but you also have absolute denial that it will ever happen. You have these two feelings running concurrently. It was thrilling. It was so exciting. My husband and I popped a bottle of champagne straight away.
I should.
Got stuck into it. It was just surreal, as so many people say, but absolutely goosebumpy, thrilling.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love so much about the book was that there's so many wonderful references to Tasmania. And how important was it to you to set it in Tasmania?
Oh, very. You know, the old piece of advice, write what you know. I don't think that necessarily means write your life.
Yeah.
It can be right, the feelings that you know, the emotions that you know, and the settings that you know, because I thought, I'm going to write Tasmania because I'm here and I can write it deeply and richly with detail. I didn't want to write somewhere else. I didn't want to write in a city because I'd moved out of the city. I wanted to reflect where I was living and the place I love. But also because, like I said, Tasmania is both beautiful and it's threatening at the same time. Half the state is under reserve or under a national park. So the wilderness is really close. And it has a somewhat dark history, you know, right through, you know, the time that we've been here. So yeah, it had to be Tassie, and the next one's Tassie too.
Oh, great! Oh, that's fabulous. Because I know that you know that people have said to me that, especially people who live in Tasmania, is because they just love reading it because they love knowing where it is, where the places are, and that's a lot of enjoyment came from that. It's like Tasmania was another character in the book, and I think that was just fabulous, and it just made me want to come further down.
Well, I think
have a look.
The response I got, I mean, Tasmania is very on trend at the moment. It's very a popular destination, and I think, as you say, the locals love the detail of seeing places that they know being represented in fiction. People who've been here for holidays love, you know, the memories and picking out the places as well. And then those who haven't been here but want to come, read it and go, oh, that sounds like a lovely place. Probably the one mistake I made with the book was it's set in a fictional village called Devil's Bay, which is very similar to the village that I live in, which is Woodbridge. But I never made a note of that. I should have put an author's note in, because now I'm worried that people are going to be Google mapping Devil's Bay and wondering where it is. It doesn't exist.
Yes. For those who don't know, Molly's Cottage is set in, it is based in Tasmania. And as Molly's mum, I very often visit with her dad, and we love Tasmania. We love Hobart, and it was wonderful to read a book that was almost like a love letter to the state of Tasmania. And so it was done in such a way that you couldn't read this and not want to visit. So maybe tourism flip you a few dollars under the table.
I think I love cold weather, and I love the moodiness of the winters here, with the mists roll in and the seas. But then you have these big blue sky, clear winter days. The weather,
yes, because it hardly rains in Tassie.
Well, yeah, people think it's a really wet place, but it's not.
It's not.
In fact, we haven't had rain for a couple of weeks now, really. I mean, very little. And in the middle of, you know, we're back to hot summers. When I say hot, 25 degrees. I think we're getting to 27 on the weekend. So it's all dry and crunchy at the moment, but for most of the year it's green because it's cool.
It's just beautiful.
It's just beautiful.
It's like
open fires, dark weather, you know, fog, storm rolling in. Love it.
Now, I know that you were editing this book during the COVID pandemic and the border shutdowns. And I was wondering whether that made the process harder for you or easier.
It really had no impact whatsoever, to be quite honest. We don't, well, the only thing was that I didn't get to get off island for what we call going off island. And I hadn't been off Ireland for a while, but that didn't really impact me at all. The book was set here, so I could check all the details I needed to down here. My head editor was in...
Who was your head editor in?
My head editor is based in... She works remotely from Switzerland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Okay, that's an amazing little tidbit. Goodness.
I mean, so, and everyone's so used to working remotely, so probably the impact was positive, because it's nothing to work, you know, remotely with people from wherever they might be.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that the pandemic changed for the better, is people are a lot more used to doing this now, doing things online, and, you know, and nobody feels like they're missing out if they're not there in person anymore.
That's right. And we can do interviews like this, which is
right, which is fabulous. Me and Melbourne, you and Tassie. Now, this was such an exciting thriller, but it also has two beautiful love stories. And how much did you enjoy writing the romantic storylines?
I did, actually, but I also had to... it's so funny, because I started off, when I decided I was going to get serious about writing, I thought I'd write romance, because I thought mistakenly that romance was easy, that it was easy. And it's not. And I didn't do very well with romance, because I kept going dark and twisty. So I tend to lean that way. So the Pippa Leo story was very clear to me, and that wasn't too hard to write. The modern timeline with Olivia and the relationship she, you know, tries with Tom, or they dapple in, was harder for me to write, because it was, I don't know, to get the layers of emotion without being over the top, without turning it into a romance. I think there are love stories in this book, but they're not easy.
No, no, definitely not.
No.
Not any of them have a very positive experience towards the end.
And we can't say what happens. So.
No, but we'll leave that. Now, you chose to write a complicated book for your debut. Dual timeline, multiple mysteries, several twists. Was that what you set out to do, or did that evolve over time? So what I'm interested in is, did you write the stories separately or both at the same time?
I never meant to make it as complex as it is. And I actually, even when it was going to print, I was thinking there's too much going on. There are too many strands, too interwoven, but it doesn't seem to be a problem. Most people find it quite straightforward following it all. So it was unintentional. When I set out right at the beginning to write this book, that was unintentional. But when because I plot, and when I start out plotting, I get big pieces of art paper and my coloured Sharpie pens, and I draw names and circles and loops and arrows and underline things, and do this for pages and pages. So I had a visual guide to it. Then I work in Scrivener.
Yes.
Which is with the corkboard. So it's like having post-it notes on the wall, and you can move them around electronically. So I could play with them that way. But when I wrote it in a linear fashion. I wrote from start to finish.
Oh.
So I jumped timelines as I wrote. And I got a sense of the rhythm of it when, we'd spent enough time in one timeline, it was time to go back to the next one, or how to leave a chapter from, say, 2017, how to leave it on a point where you want to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And also that the revelations in both timelines sort of run parallel to each other, so that you're not getting too much information given from reading the 1986 timeline that the characters in the present timeline haven't come across yet. So strangely enough, I didn't write them as two separate stories. I started at the beginning and wrote my way through.
That's incredible.
And very little change. There are a few chapter changes, moving things around a little bit once it was all done. And particularly in the preliminary chapters, they were shuffled around. But pretty much it stayed as it was.
Oh, wow. I'd like to see it inside your head. It must be very, very tidy.
No, it's not. And it was too much to hold in my head. And I read this somewhere, so you can't hold a whole novel in your mind. So again, visual aids, post-it note. When I came to editing, I had different colored post-it notes on my big desk, different colors for characters and different colors for timelines, and I could, again, it's about the rhythm of it, about seeing that 3 chapters in one timeline was enough, and you had to move back, because I didn't want readers to have one timeline that they enjoyed, and the other timeline to be a slog. I wanted them to, then they might have one they prefer, but I wanted them to enjoy both of them and want to know with both. So
yes, well, I think you did that very well, because I never felt like, oh, I want to get back. I was always interested in moving forward. So I think you've done that brilliantly, Jo. You should be very proud of yourself with that. Now, as I said, my favorite character was Pippa, because I loved her wild child vibe, and being in my early 20s in the 80s. So I found that she was very relatable. And was she based on you or anyone you know?
She might be based on who I wanted to be when I was in my 20s. Maybe a little bit of me. I never backpacked, which obviously Pippa had done. So that wasn't something I'd done. No, she came to me very much fully formed right from the beginning. I knew who she was. There's probably little bits of me in her, and there's little bits of me that wanted to be her when I was young. But yeah, she's more aspirational than based on any one person, I guess.
All right. So we know you can't have a favorite child, but who was your favorite character to write?
Okay, so Pippa was the easiest for me to write. Like, her voice was very strong and clear, and I knew who she was right from the beginning. I enjoyed writing Evelyn Clifford, Leo's mum, who's not a very nice lady.
No.
So I enjoyed the bite that she had, the snarky bite that was hidden beneath a veneer of civility, of social civility. I liked that quite a lot. I enjoyed writing her. And in the end, and this is way into the editorial process, I enjoyed Tom, the bloke from England, because he didn't come to me until editorial. And when he finally arrived in my head and was clear to me, he made me laugh. He just, when he started,
he's just an enjoyable character.
Yeah, he was. And when he finally came to me, I thought, oh my God, I like you. Like, you're kind of cool. I'd hang out with you. So I enjoyed writing him in the end, like right at the end.
And I think that we all needed it. We all needed a Tom. Like, we needed Tom. Because he brings a gentleness to the proceedings and a calmness that you just think, oh, thank goodness, because a lot of it's very full on.
Yes.
The house you describe is almost a character in its own right. And does it exist anywhere outside your imagination?
Not in its full form.
I want to go visit.
I know, because I want it. Is there geography that it sits on? So it's on a knob of a small peninsula of land. Sorry, looking over the channel over Bruny Island. There is a knob of land like that down the channel, and a house is on it. So the house sits on this. There's a knob of land with a hill on it, and the house sits on the far side of the hill. So you can't see it from the road. No neighbours can see it. The house just looks out over water. The house that exists in real life isn't a thing like my house that we have in the book. So I created the house based on the mid-century modern architecture that I love, that 1960s, 70s vibe. And it had, in the book, it's got a lot more bush and thickness to it, so it's a lot even more hidden. So it's inspired by a real place, but doesn't exist as it is in the book, unfortunately. I'd love to go there.
I think there'd be a lot of readers that are very disappointed to hear that. They might want to look it up on Airbnb and go, hey, never mind. Now, you have already answered one of the questions that I was going to ask for writers, and that was whether you're a plotter or a pantser. So you're obviously a plotter.
I'm a plotter open to change. So I very much I need to know I need to know my story before I get into it, but I don't need to know everything. So yeah, I like to plot. I like to have a structure that I'm heading into before I get really stuck into the writing. But as I said, when about that idea coming to quite a way down the manuscript, I'm very open to things changing as I go. I'm quite open to surprises, but that overall format of the story and the structure of the story and where it's heading, I do nut out quite solidly before I get going.
Oh, wow. So how long do you think that you spend on the plotting?
3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh God, you're in Jane Harper territory.
Yeah, I'm not talking about writing out scene cards for everything that happens. I will sit with a story in my head for quite a while and just play with it. I'll do the vacuuming, and I'm awful at housework and I hate doing it. But when I need a blank mind, I will do mundane jobs like that, or garden or something, because I can just tumble ideas in my head and I let things play out. So I get a feel, like almost wrap my senses around what the story is going to be and what the scenario is and what it's going to feel like and the characters in it. Then I start with my big art paper and the Sharpies, multicolour Sharpies, love them. And then I get very creative with that. And then I start on Scrivener and just put very basic cards up on the pinboard in Scrivener, with sort of an outline of where the midpoint will be and what's going to happen in the beginning, what's going to happen in the end. And then I start writing. So yeah, probably 3 months, but we're not talking about every scene being nutted out and that sort of thing.
That's such good. That's great. For all the writers out there, that's a really great description of how you go about it. And so I'm sure that that's going to be really helpful for others out there, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I need to sit down with Jo and she can help me.
The thing is to try different things. As a writer, you've got to try different ways of doing things and you'll find something that works for you. And it may not be the same every book you write, but you've got to give different methods a go, because you don't know what's going to work, what's going to click with you.
Yeah, that's good advice, because everybody's different. Yes. And I know that's a cliche, but they are, and everyone's minds work differently, so everyone writes differently. Yep. So that's something to keep in mind. And is there any advice you'd give to anyone who's writing to be published?
Oh, that's my big one, is figure out how you write and what works for you. That's probably my number one piece of advice. Number two would probably be based on my own history, is don't give up. Yeah, number three would be prepared. It can be really tough. Rejections hurt, even when they're lovely. Even once you get a contract, it doesn't become easy. It's not magic. It doesn't get easy overnight. The editorial process can be brutal. You can't be too precious about things. So that's probably my basket of advice as far as the writing. I'm not going to say write every day, because I don't. I can go weeks without writing. But I've always got something going on in my head about writing. I've got book 3 is pressing in my brain to come out, but I've got to get book 2 off to the editors first. So the stories are always there in my head. So yeah, I'm not going to give you, glib advice about write every day and all that sort of thing, because I don't.
It doesn't work for everybody.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all. Now, can you recommend a book no, actually, you've just said about your next book. So I'm going to just jump a question and say, I'm very excited about this next book, because I don't know anything about it. And is there anything you can tell us about it?
It's set in Hobart. It's about a reclusive ex-actress who has renovated a derelict grand house in Hobart. It's gone from slum to beautiful. Unfortunately, her ex-husband wants her to buy out his half, or else she's going to be kicked out. She's run out of money, so she has to take in some tenants. She takes in 2 very different women, a young 20-year-old and then a 52-year-old. So there's a diversity of ages. But while this is all going on, some really unpleasant things start happening in her world, and you get the sense that someone is out to get her. And yes, I might leave it there.
Oh,
She's got
wow. That's
unwanted, unlikely tenants, a mixture of women and dark deeds happening around her that feel threatening.
it sounds very exciting. And how soon can we expect it, Jo?
I'm hoping 2024. That's next year, isn't it? Yeah. I believe it's 2024 release date, but I'm not too sure when yet.
Well, we'll wait patiently.
Yes.
I'm not a very patient person.
I've got to edit it first.
You got to do all the hard stuff
Yeah.
first. Yes. Now, for all our readers, I was wondering if you could recommend a book by an Australian author that you've read recently and would like to recommend.
I don't know what I've done with it. That one. Oh, there we go.
You got to remember the colours.
Okay. So this one, Michelle Upton's, oh, it's got my price sticker on it still. Terms of Inheritance. Loved it.
I've got that on my TBR, yes.
Oh my God. It looks a bit flippant. It's not. It actually made me cry.
Oh.
A wealthy mum puts her 3 daughters through some challenges if they're going to get her inheritance. Poignant, on point, loved it. And this one by Vanessa McCausland, The Beautiful Words.
Oh.
I would reread this. As soon as I get the chance, I'm going to reread this. This is beautiful. It's also much of it, it's multiple timeline, multiple point of view, Tasmanian setting, in fact, down the channel, on a little island near Bruny Island. Beautifully written, just absolutely beautifully written, and really engrossing, gripping. So this is one of my favorite reads from last year, I think. Might have been the year before. But that's actually on my read again pile. So yeah.
Wow, that's an excellent recommendation if you're going to read it again. And I haven't seen that, so I am going to go out and buy that, or just jump online and order it like I do all the time. Now, thank you so much, Jo, for your time today and for being Reading by Candlelight's first book box author and interview. It was so exciting. And we actually got to the end of it and we had hardly any mess up, so yay us. And I would like to take the opportunity on behalf of Molly's Cottage to thank you.
Thank you, Fiona, and to Molly. I was so honoured to be your number 1 in the box. That was just an absolutely thrilling moment, and to be your first interview guest. You've done an awesome job, Fiona.
Oh, thank you. I was very nervous.
No, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know.
You're so lovely.
You're natural at this.
And so we'd also like to thank Molly's Cottage for the opportunity to have this wonderful conversation today. And of course, Reading by Candlelight book boxes are available from Molly's Cottage.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you
so